I want to shine a positive light on some underrated characters, so here's 5 in no particular order. First up, we have Fremine. Fremine is nothing spectacular by any means, but even still, he is surprisingly solid for what he is, that being a physical 4-star claimer DPS. His strongest team is Fremine, Farina, Fischl, Mika. Farina does Farina things, and Mika's healing is excellent for Farina's teams. Plus his buffing is really nice for a physical unit like Fremine. Fischl doesn't do very much damage here, but she's still the best source of Electro application for Superconduct. The team comes out to about 61k DPS, which by today's standards is again nothing spectacular, but it's not bad, and it's higher than his 5-star counterpart Eula, so that's pretty nice. Secondly, I have Xinyan. So Xinyan gets treated very harshly by the community, constantly being regarded as one of the worst characters in the entire game. If you are using her as a physical DPS, then yeah, she's pretty bad. But if you have a C6 Bennett, you can use her as a Pyro DPS instead, and this is much, much better. Previously, the team for this was Xinyan, Bennett, Kazuha, Zhongling, but nowadays you replace Zhongling with Farina and get a way stronger team. Farina buffs by more than Zhongling, so Xinyan's damage is higher with Farina, and Xinyan also provides a ton of AoE pyro application, which allows Farina to forward vaporize, resulting in Farina doing way more damage than Zhongling did here. So the team comes out to about 63k DPS, which is very respectable for a 4-star DPS team, especially since the team has the convenience of having both grouping and shielding. Xinyan's shield is pretty weak, but since Xinyan is on the field with her high defense, it can actually take more hits than you would expect. And both her skill and burst make the shield if you have her C2, so if need be, you can always space out the skill and burst from each other, so that you can quickly get the shield back up if it breaks. Now third on this list, I have Lynette. Lynette is a character that definitely deserves far more recognition than she gets. Her burst applies an absolutely incredible taunt that lasts a full 12 seconds and cannot be destroyed by enemies. This taunt makes an excellent means for preventing enemies from hitting your character, which can be great for preventing your character from getting interrupted. On top of that, since the enemies are going to be focusing on the taunt, most enemies will group themselves by running over to the taunt to attack it. A few teams that can make good use of this are Lenny, Zhao, and Wanderer. For Lenny, you would use Lenny, Lynette, Bennett, Zhongling. This comes out to about 72k DPS, which isn't far behind using Kazuha or Venti here, while having the taunt to help Lenny avoid getting interrupted. It's pretty considerably lower than using Farina in place of an Anemo unit, but using Farina means no grouping nor any means of interruption resistance or avoidance, so Lynette is still a solid option with unique benefits to bring to the table. For Wanderer and Zhao, Lynette's main benefit is still the same, pseudo grouping plus interruption avoidance with her taunt. But since Lynette utilizes the buff from Farazan, she also does very respectable sub-DPS damage here, easily doing over 200,000 damage per rotation. At C4, she is also an excellent Anemo battery, able to front-load 8 particles with the 2 charges of her skill, and this can be very convenient for quickly getting everyone's bursts back up if you start in an Abyss Chamber at low energy. Lynette is certainly not the highest DPS option for Wanderer and Zhao, not by any means, but her unique benefits still make her a very good option to consider. And if you do use her with them, the team would be Wanderer, Farazan, Bennett, Lynette, and for Zhao, Farazan, Lynette, and Jianyun or Bennett. My numbers for Zhao are using Bennett and not Jianyun, because these are old calcs, and I can't really be asked to calc it all over just for this video. Now, there is even more to talk about with Lynette. At C6, she gets an Anemo infusion, which allows her to be played as a main DPS, and she does this extremely well for a 4-star. A team of Lynette, Farina, Farazan, Bennett comes out to about 65k DPS. Again, nothing insane, but very respectable for a 4-star DPS. It gets ruined if your Bennett is C6 since he will override her infusion, but you can use Jan Yun instead and do plunge attacks. It's only slightly behind Bennett. Next, I have Charlotte. Charlotte has by far the highest front-loaded healing in the entire game. With all the healing you get in a very short amount of time after casting her burst, she can heal for up to like 30,000 HP. Other characters with high front-loaded healing, such as Jean and Mika, will usually be healing for up to like 19k, which is still excellent, but Charlotte's is much higher. It allows her to very easily fully heal the entire team, even if you have high max HP characters like Neuvillette and Farina. Charlotte will still very quickly heal them from near death to full. It's not very often you actually need that much healing, but it is still very nice to have. But in addition to Charlotte's incredible healing, she also provides off-field AoE cryo application. This allows her to be used as the healer on Farina teams, and turn them into a freeze team. This makes her an excellent pick for characters like Neuvillette and Wanderer if using them with Farina. The freeze provided will be very nice for helping them prevent getting interrupted. I personally believe she is the best healer option for Neuvillette Farina teams. For Wanderer, Bennett is definitely going to get you more damage. His attack buff is just way too good for Wanderer, but Charlotte can buff him with Thrilling Tales, so that, alongside getting much more fanfare with her than Bennett, allow her to still be an excellent option for damage in addition to the freeze. Charlotte also works great with Ayaka and Ganyu freeze teams. For Ganyu, Charlotte's healing allows you to use Farina, whom provides the Hydro alongside massive buffing, similar to the role Mona would traditionally play, except Farina will also be doing a ton of damage here, which Mona cannot. And Charlotte can also use Thrilling Tales, so that's even more buffing the team gets to use thanks to Charlotte's presence. For Ayaka, she would normally use Kokomi for Hydro, plus healing and Thrilling Tales, and Shenhe for buffing. Charlotte can use Thrilling Tales just like Kokomi, while allowing Ayaka to use Farina for similar buffing to Shenhe, plus Farina's excellent sub-DPS damage. Lastly, I have another cryo character, this time Layla. Layla has some pretty cool things going for her that make her a very competent shielder. Firstly, her shield's a pretty darn strong. At talent level 13, with all the shield strength she gets from her A4, C1, and the Tenacity set, her shield can easily get to around 23 to 25,000 HP. That's a pretty damn thick shield, and is the second strongest shield in the entire game. But in addition to how strong her shield is, she can also bring some nice offensive utility as well. She applies a pretty good amount of cryo, which can be useful for some reactions, and she does continuous off-field skill damage, so she can buff with the Tenacity set, and her C4, while nothing crazy, is still a decent enough buff. Plus, Layla is a sword user, so she can add even further buffing to teams with weapons like Freedom Sworn and Key of Kajnus Jute, with the latter also making her shield even stronger. Layla is also capable of doing pretty respectable damage for a shielder. Over the full 12-second duration of her skill and burst, she deals about 150% HP scaling. It's nothing crazy, but that's pretty decent for a shielder, and the fact that her damage scales with the same stat as her shield means you are sort of building her for damage at the same time as you are building her shield. Her C6 also gives her a free 40% damage bonus, which helps a lot. Unless using Layla in a team where she is actually getting buffed well, her damage isn't going to be reaching sub-DPS levels by any means, but she can still reach like 60 to 80k personal damage per rotation. In many teams, that can amount to like an extra 3 to 4,000 personal DPS from Layla, which is pretty darn good personal contribution for a shielder. The combination of Layla's thick shield, the good buffing she can provide, and her own personal DPS contribution allows her to be an excellent shield option for some teams. Here are some example teams where Layla makes a great shield option. First, we have Linny, with a team of Linny, Bennett, Zhongling, Layla. Normally, if you want to use a shielder with Linny, you would use Zhongli, but using Layla actually gets you nearly identical team DPS, and since she melts in this team, she can use Freedom Sworn here, which is an excellent buff to Linny's damage. If you are using her on Freedom Sworn here, then she is just straight up better than Zhongli, providing about 6% more team DPS than him. Melt Ganyu is another team for Layla. Here she is about equal to Zhongli, and is once again ahead of him if you have either Freedom Sworn or Ki. I didn't account for this in my calcs, but Layla is also Cryo, so she can help with energy for Ganyu to use her burst more often. And Layla is also one more stack for the first great magic if you are using that on Ganyu. Now of course we also have Wanderer with a team of Wanderer, Layla, Farazan, Bennett. Layla has a unique benefit to Wanderer in that she provides Cryo for him to swirl with his skill and get his 20% crit rate buff from his A1. 20% crit rate is an excellent buff to provide alongside all of Layla's regular utility. This makes her the highest DPS shield option for Wanderer. You ideally want to have Layla at C6 for this, as it speeds up her cryo application and makes the rotation much more consistent, but as long as you are careful with your timing, it works even pre-C6. Layla herself doesn't use Freedom Sworn here, however her cryo application does allow Bennett to use Freedom Sworn to the same effect, and if you do have Freedom on Bennett, then this is a very strong team, and for Wanderer it is only behind using a C4 Jean or Farina instead. It is of course significantly stronger to ditch the shield and use Farina with Wanderer instead, but if you prefer to play him with a shield, Layla allows you to do so while still having great DPS. And then another team Layla works great in is a forward melt gaming team. The team for this is Gaming, Layla, Rosaria, Bennett. With the constant cryo application of Layla and Rosaria together, Gaming can reliably forward melt all of his damage, and he will get a lot of extra crit rate here. Layla's shielding is a very nice convenience to have, as Gaming can be knocked out of the air when he uses his skill, which will result in a ton of lost damage, but having a shield prevents that. Now, mono cryo teams are where Layla actually deals real sub-DPS damage. These mono cryo teams use a team core of Layla, Shenhe, Kazuha, alongside a cryo DPS such as Ganyu, Wriothesley, or even Kea. For my math here, I am using Ganyu as the DPS. In these teams, Layla is capable of doing excellent sub-DPS damage because of everything I mentioned earlier, but also because she makes excellent use of Shenhe's quills. Layla is a sword user, so she gets to use Harbinger of Dawn for massive crit value, and crit value and damage bonus is what you really want with Shenhe. Furthermore, mono cryo rotations tend to be pretty long, and Layla excels in long rotations. If the rotation is at least 24 seconds long, Layla can use her skill and burst twice per rotation. This not only means she's getting twice her normal shield uptime, but it also means that she's going to get way more damage than she would otherwise. Think of this like how Fischl does way more damage in long rotations due to getting 2 Ahs. As you'll see in the math, Layla is doing over 500,000 damage per rotation, which is absolutely excellent, and her shield is still reasonably strong, even without an HP goblet or circlet here. And yeah, that's all I have today. If you liked today's video, please be sure to give a like and subscribe, and let me know what 5 characters you think are underrated in the comments below. Thanks. Bye.